Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Tuesday for the Week of Women for the 17th Annual Women's Leadership Conference presented by Muscogee Creek Nation Casino. Just thank you, everyone who attended this morning's Common Grounds presented by Premier USA. It was so great to see familiar faces and new faces this morning. Don't forget this morning to have your leadership toolkit downloaded and printed out so you can follow along. The link is in your daily email, and it'll send you to the website and download it at that Women's Leadership page. I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors again this morning, because without them, we could not host this wonderful event. Again, our presenting sponsor, Muskogee Creek Nation Casino. Our host sponsor, Indian Capital Technology Center, Georgia Pacific, Green Country Behavioral Health, St. Francis Hospital Muskogee, Advantage Controls, American Bank of Oklahoma, Armstrong Bank, Arvest Bank, Connor State College, Edward Jones, Love Bottling, Muskogee Phoenix, and Northeastern State University. Today's virtual session is presented by Green Country Behavioral Health Services, and with us today is Joy Sloan, Executive Director of Green Country, and she is going to introduce our speaker and tell us about Green Country. So I will turn it over to Joy.
Thank you, Angela. I'm so happy to be here this morning. The Women's Leadership Conference that the Chamber does is definitely one of my favorite events and Green Country's favorite events throughout the year, and we are so happy to be sponsoring it again this year. So a little bit about Green Country. We serve individuals, families, and our community in many ways. We see children and families for problem-solving issues, better communication, adjustment issues, as well as those with severe emotional and mental disorders. We do the same for adults, ranging from work relation problems to the severely mentally ill. We also serve our community through outreach, education, disaster response and management, and we are a Narcan hub for the community. The most important thing I want to tell you today about the services that we provide is that there is hope and people can and do recover. It's very important. We love serving our community and we love supporting the Chamber in their efforts in building leaders. Speaking of leaders, I have the honor today to introduce our keynote speaker today, Ms. Tammy Wellbrock. With 30 years of experience in building quality customer relations, Tammy Wellbrock served 8 years as the president and CEO for the Hays, Kansas Area Chamber of Commerce. Under Tammy's direction, the Chamber was a 2013 ACCE finalist for the Chamber of the Year and underwent a complete rebranding effort in 2018 and 2019. In 2019, Tammy launched her own professional training and coaching business called Girl Twin Solutions, offering workshops and resources to advance women in leadership roles. With the global pandemic eliminating larger groups and gatherings, Tammy was honored when her alma mater university president asked her to serve as the interim director for the Alumni Association. She has continued serving both roles to date. She's not busy at all. Tammy has a BA and an MS in communications, plus she completed her Institute of Organizational Management designation in 2014 and earned her Certified Association Executive in 2016. For more than a decade, she has also been an adjunct professor for the Fort Hays State University, teaching on-campus and virtual students various courses covering business communication, marketing principles, and sorry, I lost my place, as well as women in leadership. To top it all off, she was elected to the local school board in 2019 and will serve as its president in this upcoming year. Tammy lives in the Midwest with her husband, a radio sports broadcaster for the local university, along with their teenage son. Tammy, we are so honored to have you here today and can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. It's always awkward, I think, to hear somebody give your introduction and you feel like you toot your own horn a little bit. And certainly, I think throughout all of that experience, if you can take away anything, is that I've had a lot of different roles and have been inspired as well as frustrated by both men and women. And so I I really found my calling when I started teaching that women in leadership class for our local university. And my entire business is built around trying to inspire, empower, enlighten, whatever adjective you want to use, but certainly to help people, not just women, but men and women, understand the need for inspiring, empowering women, help them be better in their position, be better in reaching their goals for success. And so I hope that I can inspire and encourage you as well. So let me share my screen with all of you. And while I do that, let me just also share you do have an accompanying handbook that you are welcome to follow. I'm not going to be intentional about trying to ensure that you are at the right place. So I apologize if you get a little bit lost, but let me just continue here. And certainly Leaderful Women, I'll explain more about what Leaderful Women is all about. But I think that becoming a person of influence is certainly something that we want to look at. And at this time, oh, whoops, sorry. I'm going to move my little, I don't know if you can see that, but I'm moving me so that you can see better there. All right. And so at this time, there are different objectives that we're going to go through. We only have a short time together. And so I'm going to touch on several of these objectives. And we're going to talk about why is it important to understand the trends in leadership? Why is stereotypes and biases a part of this? And certainly, what are some internal barriers? What are we doing to get in our own way of success? And then look at some of those strategies. And so definitely, I don't want to share too much more about me, except the fact that I have a twin brother, and he is 10 minutes older than me, thus the name my girl twin solution, because I tell people I'm not the boy twin, and usually I hear a da-dum-dum. Anyway, but at that point, I grew with a person beside me my entire life. And I really believe team dynamics has been a part of being that twin. It's been my story. And so just the team dynamics of how women can really influence and empower that team is fascinating. So we're going to keep going more on some of this. I'm going to insert my own anecdotal stories as well as some of my experiences, and again with the full spirit of helping you be the best you can be. So leaderful is not in the Webster's dictionary, but I did pull it from yourdictionary.com, and I love this word. To me, leadership is so confused with the role of authority, but anybody at any time can be leaderful, and it's just literally showing those skill sets, the attributes that somebody being leaderful, being in a leading others. And so you can be leaderful from the chair. You can be leaderful as the lowest on the bottom of the business hierarchy. And so that's certainly what we want to talk about. And I just love the Leaderful Women. So I want to share with you this story. Some books that now is my new hobby is I go to all these garage sales and antique stores and I look for old books. And this book would be, it's a fascinating, and I'm just going to tell you right now, it's an old book. And so in this book, it's called Perfect Girlhood. If a girl engages in wrong thinking, according to this book, this is what happens to them. They become sluggish and stupid. The memory fails. Sometimes the poor victim becomes insane. They may commit suicide. I mean, horrible. And we're talking about wrong thinking. And wrong thinking to them in this book could be something as awful, and I'm stressing that, being sarcastic, as thinking that boy's cute. And so here's things that happen when you are in this wrong thinking. Your eyes become hollow and lusterless. I think it's funny, your lips and ears pale. I don't know what pale ears looks like, but it's truly, if you think and you're reading this is a terrible thing for what happens to these poor women. This professor, and he is a man, wrote this book for his own girls, his own daughters in 1913. And this book fascinates me because my grandma would have been at this age reading this book, potentially. It's not her book, but it's of her time period. And I find it fascinating that at one time, just slightly over 100 years ago, this was the feeling, the sentiment of many people about women doing wrong. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then I think it's really funny to come and see this book, How to Live Like a Lady. And this book tells you, I mean, if you're going to be a lady, you must have your purse stocked with everything. I mean, thank you cards at hand. I mean, I love thank you cards, but I don't keep them in my purse. I don't even keep them in my briefcase, or any type of tote. I think it's funny that they even talk about other things like, oh, how horrible it would be if your handbag opens up and all these things come out, and oh, how embarrassing. When do you think this book was written? Well, I'll jump to it was written in 2007, almost 100 years later, and we still have an intriguing identity about what it means to just be a woman, not necessarily a leaderful woman. And I think there's something to this that's why there's so much attention coming to professional women, women in leadership. We're searching still, and we still don't necessarily agree with what the role of a woman should be. And I haven't even gotten to the part about, do we or do we not have a career, or are we raising our family? I'm just talking about some basic things. And of course, I see this book and I just had to get it by the title. And so I open it up, and here's some of the things that I realize what this is. I thought it would be kind of a snarky, funny book. No, it is basically, there's no purpose to a woman if they lose their husband. And certainly if you become a widow in your 40s, what kind of purpose do you have? And obviously men will die, but women should strive to keep their role as being married as long as possible. This book was written by a doctor in 1962. And again, I'm just showing you some of the pop culture or some of the literature that shared what they feel like a woman should be, and what our roles and what our duties and responsibilities. Let me continue. So in 62, that book was written. And in 63, Betty Friedan comes out with The Feminine Mystique, that basically launched the word feminist, the scary word called feminist. And truly, feminist itself is not a scary word. It's just wanting to support women. That's it. We put a lot of our own baggage to that word, and it has a lot of other implications. But and then, of course, I think it's less than 10 years later, the sexual revolution. And this book was from a local high school that my husband actually went to. And again, I think it's fascinating how things have really changed, and we're still really young in the idea of what women in leadership. We're young and naive still in the way that we think about it, and we don't agree. So why do we care? Here's some of the national statistics that I'm going to share with you. But before going into that, I think it's important to understand, why are some of the national statistics happening, and how can we make progress? And certainly, we all as individuals are impacted, again, men or women, employers or employees, and those that are policymakers. And even if you're not a policymaker, you can still inspire and influence those policymakers so that things are more equal. I think it's fascinating too about the gender leadership gap. There's so many aspects about the gap of women in different things, in different, whether it's in political arena, or in the medical arena, or even just in financial. But we certainly are not as represented in the different, we being women are not as represented in the different professions. And of course, anybody that studies team dynamics understands that the more diverse your group is, whether it's genders, races, ages, whatever, the more diversity of thought you can bring to a team, the more successful, not necessarily harmonious, but the more successful they will make on progress. That's why it's important that we at least identify where the gaps are and what we can do to close that gap. The gender pay gap it's still an issue. And some of these issues, as far as we're only getting the last report that I saw, 82 cents for every dollar paid to a man. The thing that's interesting about this is the fact that some of these pay gaps aren't necessarily because, we want to be mad at the men. This is not a presentation that is blaming or shaming. It's just sharing some of the realities. And there's a lot of reasons why the gender pay gap exists. A lot of times, right or wrong, not pushing any judgment on any of this. Women tend to be the ones to stay at home. Women tend to be the ones that have more gaps in their profession because of staying home for kids or maternity leave, or in my role, I'm in the sandwich generation, and I have been taking care of my elderly parents as well as my teenage son. And so there's just a lot of difference. Not saying men don't do this, but there's a lot to impact the fact that it's not just people being bad or mean, but it still exists. And we need to be curious about some of the reasons why. So back to that understanding the why, I already shared some of the aspects, but it's everything from socioeconomic, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, and age. I mean, it's really difficult to define one reason that is explaining the gap. And so because we can't necessarily just narrow down why, it's also harder to, resolve as well. So let me just share though, everything I'm talking about today, I'm aware that as a coach, professional coach, trainer, presenter, whatever, I am not a counselor. I am not at all, and I'm also not a legal advisor. And so at that point, I recognize that there is true sexual harassment and crimes committed based on gender. I'm not trying to gloss over any of that. I'm focusing this presentation on what we can control, what you as an individual can control. And if you certainly have something that is harming your health, your physical safety, whatever, I hope that you seek the help that you are. But I just don't want people to confuse what the purpose of this presentation is about. So let me keep going. So I love this. I love Eleanor Roosevelt, truth be told, but I think it's really impactful to think about her quote: "Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people." And one of the very first things I do when I go to lunch with my girlfriends, we're talking about people. Yes, I am embarrassed to say that sometimes I am discussing people. And I think I'm trying to actually, as I go further into my personal relationships as well as my professional, I'm starting to challenge my own self to start talking about ideas and looking at systems and processes versus placing that blame and shame on a person. And so, but in your workbook too, we talked about leadership goals. And I would love for you, when you get a chance, to go back and really reflect on some of these. If you had no obstacles, what would you accomplish? Skills, talents do you need to enhance your goal? And this is self-reflection that I think should be done often. It should be done at different life timing, when our seasons of life change, let's put it that way. And so what would your world look like if you accomplished this? And it's okay to think, I don't like my world if I would. So I'm going to choose where I'm at. We don't always have to be climbing that proverbial ladder of success to find success. It's important for you to define what is best for you, your family, and the world you live in. What experiences brought you to this vision or goal? And I think those If you're wanting a new position, these would be things that would help you in that interview. It would also, I think, just help give you some direction. I want to shift the focus a little bit here. And I want all of you now to think from an employer's perspective. You are now in a position where you are going to be promoting one of two people. These are the two finalists. Meet Tracy and meet Chris. So let me talk a little bit about Tracy and Chris. And you have this in your workbook as well. And you're welcome to write down any thoughts you have. But Tracy is one of those workers that first to make coffee in the morning, always taking minutes during meetings. Due to the major lifestyle changes following the birth of the first child, Tracy gained 30 pounds and clothes are tight fitting. People have actually come to you and kind of complained. Oh gosh, do you, as Tracy's employer, do you address it? Tracy's married, has that one child, very family focused. In fact, Tracy never misses that daughter's party, events, never misses a doctor's appointment, stays home with that daughter when the daughter's sick. I mean, quite the parent. Then you hear another coworker has overheard Tracy talking in the break room about trying to have another baby. And the first thought that comes into your mind is, last time with Tracy's daughter, Tracy took 12 weeks off. Gosh, we got that pending project. Can Tracy do the job being gone? There's never been an issue with tardiness, but all of that paid time off that is accrued, it's depleted. Tracy uses it all up. Okay. So again, both are mid-management level. One's 12 years at the company, one's 5 years. Tracy being more soft-spoken, mild-mannered. And then you get the opposite with Chris. Chris is the life of the party. Chris has been able to save so much money based on innovative ideas. But Chris is that person, oh, that drives you crazy, leaves all the dirty dishes in the sink after lunch. Chris doesn't know even where the copy machine is and has to go ask another coworker. Very, very smart dresser, expensive business suits. Unlike Tracy, Chris is single. Chris burns PTO and only uses one vacation. But every Friday, Chris is on the golf course, but doesn't take PTO because Chris, and I quote, "I'm golfing with clients and other business associates, so I consider this part of work duties," and doesn't take PTO. But here's the thing. Last holiday party, Chris went home with another coworker. Monday morning, that story came around, and you ended up hearing things like, Chris is getting high fives for scoring at the party. These are real. In fact, they're very real. I've observed all of these happening. So my question to you is, who do you think is the one who should be promoted? Why do you think that person should be promoted? What are your thoughts about talking to Tracy about the tight clothing? Oh, awkward. What are your thoughts about talking to Chris about keeping personal life and business life, keep it confidential, keep it quiet, not making such a big deal about it? Who do you think is more admirable? The person, Tracy, that is committed to a family, or Chris, who is more committed to the company based on the money and very little time taken off? Okay, so you've got you're picturing Tracy in your mind and you're picturing Chris in your mind. So let me tell you that Tracy is actually a man and Chris is a woman. And now I want to ask you those same questions. Would you talk to a man who is wearing tight-fitted clothes? I have often, as a supervisor of primarily women, I am often being asked by my higher ups to address the dress code with women. Very rarely do we identify dress code with men. And I will tell you that we tend to not think too much about men having encounters of romance. But boy, that woman, we wouldn't have celebrated that woman, would we? We'd give a high five to a man. And I'm not saying that's right, but I've seen it done. But the woman that the man slept with was considered a slut. Why is he not? And so, why does Tracy now, do you think differently of Tracy? Why is he taking 12 weeks of paternity? Why is he doing that? And so we, both men and women, have these gender stereotypes that are placed on them. And so I could keep going on this, but I want you to at least think about what was your initial reaction, and that therein is where we go next. Stereotypes are truly those we have stereotypes. It's human nature. We're not bad people if we use stereotypes. In fact, much about what my presentation is based on is stereotypes, because it's a short, quick way of managing our own thoughts and being able to take action. What is concerning about a stereotype, though, is when it characterizes people based on those gender, age, race, and now we make a belief that is semi-permanent, and now I don't ever question the bias. The bias is repeated exposure to stereotypes. And then let me go further. You will see this in your workbook, and you could write down the definition of implicit bias. So we're getting a little deeper here, is when you may consciously deny, reject, or not even be aware that you have an attitude or association regarding people. So my Tracy Chris example was to bring forward, do you have implicit bias? Do you think poorly of that parent, man or woman, who wants to spend time with their child when they're sick or with the doctor's office? Do you think worse of or better of that employee, man or woman, who may have a relationship with a coworker, a romantic one? And so you need to, though, be able to understand, how are these implicit biases working within you, keeping you from making progress, and how are those implicit biases of others around you keeping you from, but you can only control yourself. And so you can't control the others. So here's what I'd love for you to do. And this website, that https / and all that, implicit.harvard.edu, that website is in your workbook. And that's a very easy way to check to see how much of your biases are implicit. I took the test and I was kind of embarrassed at my results. For instance, an implicit bias that I had, didn't know I had. I walk up to a woman at one of our chamber events, and we both parked next to each other, and I noticed in her car she had a veteran's license plate. So I went up to her and I said, I didn't know your husband was in the service. And her answer was, he wasn't, I was. And I felt like such a fool. I had let implicit bias, the word veteran equaled male in my mind. And that's not the reality of today's world. And so I, not taking the time to maybe even do that self-reflection, could have lost me a customer, could have lost me a friend. And it's embarrassing. I look ignorant. And who wants to present that type of presentation? So this is a concept, and I'm kind of switching gears here, but I really am fascinated with the role communication has with gender. And this book was written in 2001. Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti. I have not read the book, but I have been exploring this concept after a friend told it to me, and I was just like blown away. So let me just share with you real quickly. And I'm going into a stereotype. Please understand that. Not everybody fits the stereotype, but a good chunk of people, let's just say men, a good chunk of men think like waffles. And when you think about it, Men are very good at compartmentalizing, just like those little compartments on the waffle. So when a man is in his work waffle compartment, he might even be in his budget waffle, and later he might have to deal with his employee performance reviews waffle quadrant later. And they are very much focused on what it is they need to be doing on. And they're not in their family, they're not in their relationship waffle quadrant. They're in a specific focused thinking, and that's how their mind works. And then they can compartmentalize. Women, on the other hand, are are like spaghetti in that it's very fluid the way that women think. They are they're thinking of at the same time, and I'm gosh, it's just described to me. I am already thinking about what I need to do to get groceries here after I wrap up today. And oh yeah, did my son get to weights on time this morning? And oh yeah, I need to be able to you know, get ready for this presentation. We're thinking about it all. It's very fluid. It's very multitasking. It's being able to connect and find relationships and patterns and behaviors and trends. Both have purpose. But when you are a spaghetti thinker working with a waffle thinker, have any of you been so mad at your husband because it's like, why can't he figure out that the kid needs to get to school on time, or because he had the and he's not thinking about that. I'm though worried at work about what I'm making for supper that night. And so I think both have a place. Let me go further into it. I've actually started, again, back to the stereotype that women think more spaghetti. Well, then how can we control what it is that we wish to do? If you're a waffle person, then think the opposite, think more spaghetti. But I'm going to focus based on that stereotype that more of the women that I've worked with need to think more waffle. And here's why. We are often thinking that, you know, we're so tied together. Oh, sorry. Let me get to the next one. We're so into uh, these boundaries, and where women will seek permission, men will test the limits. Women are looking for that emotional connection. Men, it's really just money and business. Men are more likely to ask for raises or promotions, do so more often in their careers. Men tend to overestimate their performance while women underestimate theirs. Well, why would I tell somebody now to think waffle? What does that have anything to do with it? Well, first of all, if you are going to your boss, who may be a man, and you want to go ask for a raise, and they're not thinking anything about, you need to get them into that waffle, and you yourself need to think about specifically what makes you good at what you do. And don't be thinking about, well, but Sally over here, she really does this. She probably deserves it. Or, I do take a lot of vacation. No, what get in your waffle and think that way and be very specific, very focused. Let me also just share that I think it's interesting that we feel lucky to get opportunities and we don't believe we should take credit for what we do. It's a teamwork. We all pitched in. But here's the other thing. Women believe if they work hard, a boss will recognize that quality work and reward accordingly. But if that boss is not thinking raise waffle quadrant, they're not going to recognize your hard work. They're going to appreciate it, but they're not necessarily going to put it into a reward system. And so women really must be able to communicate, to value their own work first, then advocate for other best interests. Let me just give, before I get off the waffle spaghetti, I want to also share with you this example. A man is sitting at the couch and asks, no, excuse me, the woman sitting at the couch and asks her husband, who's in the kitchen, to bring her the set of papers that are on the kitchen table. He grabs the papers and he brings them to her. Okay, he did exactly what she asked for. Flip it. A man sitting on the sofa wanting those same papers. The wife not only brings the papers, but thinks, I bet he needs a pen. And gosh darn it, he's got that drink again and he's not using a coaster. So on the way to the sofa, grabs another coaster and then remembers that, hey, there was some mail that came in, and also grabs the mail because he needs to look through it. Whatever. That's the difference between thinking waffle, thinking spaghetti. And I would challenge you, because if you are somebody that has trouble taking out emotions from business dealings, maybe you need to think waffle. If you have trouble, if you have trouble being able to concentrate at work because your dog or your cat barfed all over the floor before you came, and you know you've got that mess to clean up when you get home, maybe you need to think waffle. There's just so many things, and that's kind of become my work mantra. When I know I'm getting sidetracked with some of the life's happenings, I just tell myself, think waffle. But there's beauty in thinking spaghetti too. And then that truly, I believe, is why, again, having a team of people coming at life in such different perspectives and capacities really makes the opportunity for success to be that greater. I also want to talk a little bit about queen bee syndrome, and I think this is why I've been motivated. I've worked with people. I've been motivated to really explore women in leadership, and part of what I'm doing now is to be a coach. I hope for younger businesswomen, to be there for them when I was their age and really didn't have somebody my age with the experience. And part of that, I think, is based on this queen bee. Uh, it was first identified and coined in 1973, and it's that woman that is in a position of authority but doesn't help other women succeed. Very critical of their female peers and subordinates. If you think about the movie Mean Girls, that's queen bees, and they really aren't trying to help others reach the same success. And now, so I think I find fascinating about that is, I just turned 50. When I was graduating college, I remembered thinking, I'm so glad that the women before me tore down those walls, tore down those stereotypes, the glass ceilings, the, and made such positive change. And now through the years, fast forward the 30 years later, I'm realizing not enough has changed. And that saddens me. And some of what I've had to fight against is other women trying to pull me down. My mom, I never really heard of the queen bee syndrome, but my mom always gave me this analogy when I was growing up. And there's a lot of truth to it. And it's, think about children in the playground. Children, boys will swarm and pick on the weak boy, and they will try to tear down that kid. Girls, on the other hand, will swarm and try to tear down the popular girl, the most successful girl, the prettiest, whatever they're defining as the it girl, and they try to take that person down. So now, why do we care about that? um well, first of all, in 2011, and I haven't been able to find a newer um, result of this, but the American Management Association said out of 1,000 working women surveyed, 95% of them believe they were undermined by another woman at some point in their careers. Um, and so let me just say, at that point, if that is indeed still true today, which I believe a good chunk of it still is, not only are we having to overcome as women, overcome the barriers against men, and now we also have to fight against our own gender. And I'm just talking about the gender identity that in very simplistic terms, of the way we were born, men versus women. And I realize that there's a whole new world out there. And of course, now with what do they call it? The great resignation, that they are now anticipating post COVID that 40% of employees will not be returning to their same job, that they will be seeking new employment or staying at home because of the high cost of childcare. I think we're going to see a lot more of this dynamic taking place. So what can you do to remove the sting? If indeed women are working twice as hard as men to achieve the same position, what can we do? Well, certainly you don't have to be in a role of authority to be leaderful. You can help mentor, train, inspire other women. You can ask for specifics on how you can improve. But there's a being confrontational and being assertive is something that certainly is an art in itself. And being able to though go ask for that type of progress that you need to make, get that kind of feedback, but then accepting it, but then demonstrating composure and professionalism, standing up for what's right. I also believe very strongly, now this is my quote, I think it's fascinating that so many women, though, are overwhelmed in both their professional world and their personal life. And this is for single and married women, but I'm fascinated by the fact that so many women will not allow for help. They will not, there's a good number of women I work with that don't delegate, and they don't necessarily help other people, because it's easier for me to just do it versus taking the time for you to learn. Well, at that point, you then have lost the right to complain about your situation. In other words, if you want the dishwasher cleaned out, you can't gripe about where the dishes go. Yes, my son, my teenage son, it's like an Easter egg hunt every time. Now, I'm trying to teach him how to do it right. Don't get me wrong. We should always be trying to counsel and coach and direct. But it's the act of, I'm just going to take over now because you don't do it right. Women do that in the workplace and at home more often than men do. And guess what, ladies? It overwhelms us. So what do? You focus on what you can control, and you have to let go of some of this. And as a society, we need to be able to inspire and promote men to be able to help out. I'm so thankful. My husband he's been, I mean, now don't get me wrong, we still have why I've never learned to grill, but if we're going to cook and it's grilling, he does it. He does the yard work. He does the maintenance on our cars, but we split the household duties. He cleans and I clean. He's usually vacuuming. I'm usually mopping. He's dusting. I'm doing the windows, whatever. He helps me with the laundry. In fact, early on in our marriage, I just told him, I'll do the laundry, but I can't worry about the laundry. You worry about the laundry, I'll worry about our food menu. So he will help me cook, but I've worried about, do we have the groceries? And I worry about it. I own that. Where I'll do the laundry, I'll sort, I'll throw loads in, but he worries about it. Hey, can you make sure the lights get on? And so it's being able to let go and understand where your opportunities are. And so here's just some different action steps. I'm not going to go through all of them, but hopefully you're at least owning the fact that it starts with you. We can blame and shame as much as we want. We could wish that person to change. Now, you can do what you can in terms of having authentic, real conversations with another person. You can own your share of whatever the mess is. But I think speaking from the heart isn't necessarily emotionally charged. Being able to speak in a mindset, or not a mindset, but in a bland tone that I was once taught, speak about when talking about controversial things, use your tone, the pass the butter voice. Because when you ask somebody, hey, can you pass the butter? It's neutral. You say it in a way that no one gets upset, and you think about things that you could do. I also believe very strongly that we don't have to put up with a work environment that doesn't support us. Now, there may be things in that work environment we don't like for instance, maybe you would like to see a paternity leave being offered, and it's not. Well, then you can go have conversations, and it may or may not. I mean, if you're not the decision maker, then at that point you can only do so much. But if you work in a place where they really don't value you as a woman, then leave. Go find a job that will. Find a mate that will be supportive. And so at that point, raise your children to be empathetic and compassionate and caring for the other people in their world. But certainly becoming curious, curious about yourself and curious about others is where it starts. If you're an employer, think about these different things that maybe there is a need for childcare or flexibility with schedules. I think if anything that the pandemic taught us is that we should be able to trust our employees working. And if you can't, then that is an individual situation. But I mean, I know that there are some jobs that unfairly have to be at work. And so, but those positions are known up front, and you have every right to apply for the position that has more flexibility within the company. For instance, there is somebody that always has to show up on time to turn on lights and open doors. I get that. But maybe there's some other ways that you as an employer can help create an environment that is inclusive for all. And policymakers, that could be you are like me and decided to run for school board. What was I thinking? Anyway, but I'm proud of that. And so maybe there's some things that you can do that is seeking an elected official, or go talk to an elected official. Go talk to your HR department. Think about policies that could be strengthened. And do some research. Come in with your facts and figures and your knowledge. Don't wait for somebody else to drive that vehicle forward when you believe very passionately about that. So I am wrapping up my time. I understand that Angela has been looking for, and I'm going to looking for questions. But here's my contact information. It's on that side. If I can be a part of your success journey, I would so like to do that. Let me stop sharing right now, and well, there, get to me. So I guess, Angela, is there any questions that have come through the chat feature, and or do you have questions? And while you're looking up that, let me just do a shout out that this community, Muskogee, has some excellent people at the helm of the chamber. You guys probably already know this about Angela and Corinne, but they're rock stars, and they're rock stars in the chamber industry. And so you guys are very fortunate to have these talented ladies at the helm. Sorry, I had to make that plug for you.
Well, thank you, Tammy. I will pay you later for that good little compliment for Corinne and I. We appreciate it. And yes, if anyone has a question, please put it in the chat box and we will get it answered to Tammy. So thank you, Tammy. I know I recognized myself as a waffle thinker. And so now I can work on kind of being a little bit more of a spaghetti thinker. So I think it's always good to do a little self-reflection and find your faults, find your strengths, and kind of build from one another on that. So thank you. And I appreciate it. And I think meaningful conversations go a long way as well, than just sometimes straight to business Q&A. So I do not see any questions, but I will watch it for another minute or two while I do a little housekeeping work for our follow-up. Be sure to download the toolkit for tomorrow. If you already downloaded it, Cara, our speaker for tomorrow, added a few things. So make sure to re-download that when you do get the link. And a little reminder for tomorrow night, we are hosting our networking opportunity at 5 o'clock at the Muscogee Golf Club for our Wine and Nine. Don't worry, you won't have to play 9 holes of golf. We're just going to do a fun little putting game and networking opportunity. So if you're scared of golf, don't worry. And then be sure to follow the Women's Leadership Facebook page all week. We're recognizing some amazing women in Muskogee, and it'll have all the information on the networking events and the speakers for the rest of the week. Also, this year's speaker sessions are being recorded, so you can go on and rewatch, or if you happen to miss yesterday's session or one in the coming days, you can go back and rewatch those, which is an awesome addition for this year for the conference. So be looking for your newsletter, and it'll have the password and link for those videos. And I don't see any questions, Tammy, so you may have explained yourself very thoroughly, and we appreciate it. And I think the handbook is great, so we can take some time after this and really reflect and set some of those goals. So we appreciate your time today. And if anyone has questions for Tammy after this, we know how to get a hold of her. So just let myself or someone on the chamber team know, and we can get you Tammy's information. So at this time, it is time for our giveaway for today. And we are giving away this Haley and Lloyd from Haley and Lloyd bracelet. It's valued over $250. And yes, I'm a wonderful hand model. And I am going to go ahead and spin the wheel for this awesome prize today. Here we go. The lucky winner today is, drum roll, Jamie Moore. So Jamie, congratulations. I will give this up to you, even though I've been enjoying wearing it today. We will contact you, Jamie. And again, thank you everyone for joining us today. And we will see you back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Thank you. Bye.